The sharp punch to Noah's jaw sent him reeling, his body twisting in the chair. But he held his ground, refusing to give him the satisfaction of hearing him scream. The cold metal beneath him was slick with blood as he slowly lifted his head. His eyes flickered around the dim underground chamber. The low hum of electricity buzzed in the silence. Two guards with pale green skin paced back and forth, both holding nerve-inducing pulse weapons, devices capable of targeting the body's most sensitive nerve endings. But despite their best efforts, Noah remained silent. "Human," one of the guards snarled, tapping the weapon against his cheek. "They all break. Eventually." Noah spit a mouthful of blood onto the floor, a wicked grin spreading across his face. "I guess I can get that memo." Another fist struck, this time to his ribs, but he didn't flinch. They'd strapped him down, bolted him in a chair, and tore his shirt open during earlier rounds of questioning. The interrogator, a tall figure with a sharp, calculating gaze, loomed over him. "Where is it?" "The intel." Noah's eyes met his. "Burned it," he said, his voice steady despite the blood staining his teeth. "Right after I downloaded your general's little secrets." That response was the wrong one. The world around him exploded in blinding pain. When he came to, he was still slumped in the chair, wrists raw from the restraints, his chest rising and falling with each labored breath. The room was empty now. A soft voice broke the silence, a whisper brushing against his ear. "You're lucky the commander wants you alive." Noah turned his head slowly. A younger guard, wearing a sly smirk, had entered the room again. "What's that supposed to mean?" Noah rasped, his voice hoarse from the beating. "They were going to dispose of you," the guard said, stepping closer. "Put your body on display as a warning. But the orders changed, which means," he leaned in, voice low, "you're more valuable than they thought." The guard vanished without another word. Noah let his head fall back, blood dripping from his mouth. He stared at the ceiling, his thoughts racing. They didn't understand. He had something they didn't know about, something buried deep in an encrypted chip he'd hidden. And if the rumors were right, if the woman keeping him alive was really her, this was just the start. He heard footsteps approaching. The door creaked open, and Noah didn't move. "Awake now, are we?" a voice asked. Noah opened his eyes to see her standing in the doorway, a figure taller than expected, clad in a dark uniform that fit like a second skin. She was green-skinned, but unlike the others, she carried herself with an unmistakable authority. Her short blonde hair framed her sharp features. "General Nira," Noah said, recognizing her instantly. "You're the one keeping me alive." She paused, 2 steps away from him. Alive is a matter of perspective. "You override their kill orders," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "I'm just an asset to you, aren't I?" Nira didn't respond immediately. Her gaze flicked over him, analyzing. "You've been difficult," she said finally. "That's one way to put it," Noah replied, his smirk still present despite the pain. She tilted her head slightly, as if considering him. 8 hours of torture. Your pain tolerance is impressive, but eventually everyone breaks. Noah leaned forward, straining against the chair. "You think I'm here because I got caught?" Something in Nira's expression shifted, a faint flicker of tension in her eyes. "You're in the files I stole," Noah continued, his voice soft. "You're not just a footnote. You're a section." Nira's eyes widened slightly. She took a step closer, narrowing her gaze. "If this is some trick, it's a reckless one." Noah's grin widened. "No trick, just truth." He saw the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, and she turned without a word. 3 hours later, the door opened again, and Nira walked in alone. She was holding a small device. "What's this?" Noah asked, his curiosity piqued. "The files," Nira replied coolly, activating the device. A projection appeared between them, spinning with decrypted data, names, classifications, and tribunal records. Then one entry flashed in red, loyalty compromised. Noah's voice was almost gentle. "They think you've gone soft." Nira stepped closer, her expression hardening. "They're wrong. They won't care. They will when I expose them," Noah said, leaning back in his chair. "So what now?" he asked. "You kill me and burn the chip? Or do you protect me and figure out who put you on that list?" Nira didn't respond immediately. You don't seem afraid. I'm not. You should be. I'm just curious, he said. Curious why someone like you, who could have left me tied to that chair to die, chose to come back. Her eyes narrowed, and she stepped back, crossing her arms. You're not dying today, Noah. He raised an eyebrow. Sound like a promise. More like a warning, she replied, her voice cold. Before she left, Noah called out, his voice rough. Careful who you protect. Might start to look like you care. Nira didn't apply as she left, sealing the door behind her. Noah leaned back in the chair, a small smile tugging at his lips. Later, Nira sat alone in her quarters, the decrypted data flickering before her on the terminal. The more she looked at it, the more the pieces fell into place. Kyle had been right. Her government wasn't just suspicious of her. They were preparing to eliminate her. Across the room, Noah lay on the cot, his posture relaxed but tense beneath the surface. You don't sleep? He asked from the dim corner. Nira didn't glance up. Not when I'm surrounded by threats. You brought me here, Noah said, slowly crossing the room. Doesn't make you any less dangerous. She didn't respond, but her pulse quickened. He stood before her, his eyes intense, full of something more than just defiance. You keep telling yourself I'm the enemy, he said softly. But you're not sure anymore, are you? She looked up at him sharply, her chest tightening. I didn't say that, she muttered. You didn't have to. As Nira moved past him, their bodies brushed just a touch, but it felt like an electric shock. Her breath hitched, her hand rising as if to strike him. But before she could act, his hand closed gently around her wrist. Tell me to back off, he said, voice low. She should have pushed him away. But instead, she found herself frozen, staring at his hand, then up into his eyes. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped back, voice stone cold once more. Sleep. We move at dawn. Noah didn't reply. He just watched her walk away. Nira returned to her terminal, but she couldn't focus. The decrypted files on her screen, the whispers of betrayal, everything felt wrong. Noah had told the truth, and now she couldn't ignore the fact that her own government was preparing to dispose of her. Noah shifted on the cot, propping himself up on one elbow. You sleep like a machine, or is this just for me? Nira didn't look at him. I don't sleep when I'm surrounded by threats. He sat up. You dragged me here. Doesn't make you any less dangerous. She rose and crossed the room slowly, her eyes fixed on him. You think I'm the enemy? Noah's gaze softened, but his voice remained firm. I think you convinced yourself of that, but you're not sure anymore. She turned away, but he followed her, closing the gap. They stood inches apart, the tension between them thick as air. You don't have to keep lying to yourself, Noah said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. And for the first time, Nira wasn't sure which side she was on. Her palm slammed into his chest, sending a jolt through his ribs. You have no idea what I'm capable of, she said, her voice tight. Noah's eyes darkened, his tone lowering. Neither do you. He didn't flinch when she pushed off him, stepping back with the grace of someone who had just touched a live wire. Get dressed. We leave in an hour, she commanded, not sparing him another glance. Noah sighed, wiping his hand over his face. Great. Nothing like an early morning ambush. She didn't respond, focusing instead on the task ahead. The rendezvous point was 2 clicks north, hidden in the dense undergrowth, an old relay node connected to a diplomatic uplink from long ago. She used her override codes to access the dormant signal, while Noah stood guard, pulse rifle in hand, eyes sharp as ever. What troubled her more than anything, though, was the way her gaze lingered on him. The way she had memorized the scar beneath his ribs without meaning to. The way she wanted to get closer, not for tactical reasons, but for warmth. And that, she knew, was dangerous. Emotions were far more perilous than any weapon, and Noah was both of those things wrapped up in one. By the time they made it back to the bunker, the sun had dipped low. The relay was up and transmitting the encrypted data he had stolen. Slow, but steady, it was enough to give him something to work with, as long as they stayed alive long enough. She sealed the entrance and shed her tactical vest. Noah dropped his rifle on the cot and began peeling off his sweat-soaked shirt. Your back's bleeding, she noted as she observed the shallow gashes from earlier. Noah turned slightly, caught a branch or two. She crossed the room, pulling a med kit from the wall. She stood behind him, silent for a moment before speaking. Sit. Noah lowered himself onto the cot, his muscles tense as she applied the patch to his shoulder. Her fingers brushed the skin of his back. You're not just a thief, she remarked, her voice soft but pointed. No, I've trained for this, he replied with a tilt of his head, glancing at her. Why lie about it? Her hand paused on his shoulder. She didn't meet his gaze. He turned to face her. Why are you helping me? He asked. She didn't answer at first. The silence stretched between them before she whispered, You think I'm your downfall? Her breath caught, and for a moment she didn't speak. I think, she hesitated, the words hard to find. You're the first person who sees me. Then let me look, he said, his voice low. His thumb brushed against her jaw as his fingers gently slid over hers. She pulled her hand away slowly. I can't protect you from what's coming. You're not supposed to, he replied quietly. That was it. Not a kiss, not a confession, but something in the air shifted, the distance between them shattering completely. When she stepped back, she didn't look at him again. The relay signal broke mid-transmission, static crackling through the screen, data corrupted. Lines of code froze in a cascade of red. Noah leaned against the wall behind her, his eyes steady. Is that all of it? She asked. No, he answered. Only 1/3. Someone intercepted the channel. They're on to us, he added, his voice low. She turned, the sharpness in her voice returning. How much time do we have? Hours. Maybe less. 20 minutes later, Noah stepped out of the bunker, now wearing the uniform of a Tier 3 operative, a dark tactical suit with light shoulder plating. The gear had been an emergency set stored in the safe house, in case of infiltration from their own side. She'd made sure it fit him. You're serious about this? Noah asked, adjusting the embedded ID tag at his collar. Her eyes never left her work. If you want to stay alive longer than a day, you need to blend in. So we're playing pretend? You're not pretending. You're becoming. He raised an eyebrow. I've seen worse. She didn't respond, finishing her adjustments. You say that like it's romantic, he smirked. She gave him a deadpan look. It's not. Noah chuckled, still recognizable. Not once this kicks in, she replied, tapping the camo shift implant just beneath his ear. It'll project a neural blur, disorienting facial scans, and confusing tracking systems. Enough to pass you off as one of mine. She tossed the data pad in his direction. You'll memorize these gestures, stances, vocal shifts. My officers don't just move, they dominate. They control attention. You can't mimic them. You have to command them. Noah caught the pad with one hand. Sounds familiar. You've got 1 hour, she said. He met her gaze, leaning forward slightly. What if I want you to teach me? She raised an eyebrow, refusing to back down. You don't have time for games. Noah stepped closer, holding the datapad, but he didn't look at it. I don't mean that kind of teaching. Her gaze flickered, and she closed the distance. You think you're clever? I think I'm the only one here not lying to myself, he said, his voice calm but unwavering. She didn't flinch, but met his challenge head on. He nodded. You think this is strategy, this uniform, this whole operation? But it's not. You're improvising, and you're scared. Her fingers twitched at her side. I'm not scared. You are, he said softly. Not what's coming, not of your command, but of this. Of me. Of us. She stayed silent for a moment. Her eyes narrowed as she processed his words. You're confusing proximity with permission, she said finally, her voice as sharp as ever. He didn't retreat, his gaze steady. And you're confusing control with safety. The tension between them was thick, electric. Without breaking eye contact, she lifted her hand and placed it firmly on his chest. This is not safety, she said quietly. He smiled, slow and sharp. Exactly. The training began immediately, sharp and intense. She instructed him on posture, how to stand, how to move with authority. Let me guess, Noah muttered as he straightened his back. You all come out of the womb saluting? She ignored him, eyes locked on his form. Now speak. Use my tone. He straightened up, using her tone. Step aside. Now. She nodded slightly. Better, but you still sound like you're waiting for permission. He closed the distance between them, his voice a low whisper. Maybe I'm waiting for something else. She didn't answer, but he stepped behind her, mirroring her posture. Show me how you move, he said softly. She turned slowly, narrowing her eyes. You think I'm some dance instructor? No, he replied. I think your body speaks faster than your voice. And then she moved. Every step was precise, controlled, and Noah matched her perfectly, step for step. She stopped in front of him once more, her stance flawless. Last test, she said, a challenge in her eyes. Command me. Noah didn't blink. In one fluid motion, he grabbed her wrist, spun her, and pressed her against the wall. The air between them disappeared, and though she didn't quicken her breath, Noah could feel her pulse quicken. You're too close, she said, her voice strained. I know, he replied, eyes locked on hers. Say the order. She leaned in closer, barely a whisper in his ear. No, he didn't move, his face inches from hers. Then what are you doing? He asked softly. Her breath hitched as she closed her eyes. Noah didn't kiss her, didn't act, but in that moment, everything seemed to shift. What are you doing? She whispered back, her voice faltering. He leaned in, not to kiss her, but to figure out who was truly in control. She stood before him, the firelight flickering against her soaked uniform. Noah stepped closer, his voice low. If they find us tomorrow, he said, we won't get another night like this. Misa swallowed, her gaze shifting downward as her voice dropped to a whisper. So, what are you saying? He didn't respond with words. Instead, his hand moved gently to the side of her neck, a subtle, intimate gesture. She didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers brushed his wrist. Then, without thinking, she stepped closer, her forehead resting softly against his. I'm still your commander, she whispered, barely audible. And I still want you, Noah replied, the fire crackling between them. Outside, the world continued to chase them, but within the walls of that small, ruined chamber, they allowed themselves a moment of silence, just enough for Misa to let her guard down, just enough for him. For over a minute, neither of them moved. Her forehead stayed pressed to his, her hand still cradling his wrist. The chill of the flood tunnel still clung to their damp bodies, but neither of them dared cross the final boundary that had always separated them. Finally, Noah broke the silence. So what now, General? Her voice was quiet, almost distant. You learn to move like one of mine. He smirked. I've been moving like yours since you threw me against that wall. Misa stepped back, taking a deep breath before turning toward the fire. She crouched down, tapping a sequence into her wrist module. A small holographic figure flickered above the flames, its posture perfect, its limbs aligned in commanding stance that had become her trademark. Watch, she instructed. The figure moved slowly, deliberately, each gesture meaningful. How to enter a room, how to halt subordinates with a single motion, how to dominate space with nothing but silence and presence. This is how command flows through the body, Misa said. It's nonverbal. Every posture is a directive. Every movement is a law. Noah nodded slowly. You're teaching me how to own a room. I'm teaching you how to survive it, she replied, her tone flat but sharp. Misa turned back to face him, her gaze unwavering. There's a reason no one challenges my authority. In open halls, it's not just fear, it's ritual. It's body language, the art of physical authority. Touch is control. Touch is message. Noah stepped closer, his eyes focused. Then show me. Her thumb brushed beneath his chin, lifting his head. You lead with the eyes, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her hand moved his shoulder, pressing down firmly. Shoulders down, she instructed. Never brace. You're not defending. You're commanding. Then her hand flattened against his chest, right over his heart. Her voice softened. The heart is exposed. Always. That's where real command begins. Anyone can wear armor. Few are brave enough to lead without it. Noah's voice was low as he glanced down. What about you? She didn't look away. I wear both. Her touch slid to his hip and stopped. Touch, she said, is also how we warn. Noah tilted his head, confused. Warn? Alien etiquette. Misa stepped around him, brushing her palm over his back as she passed. This, she said, her voice calm, is a silent command. Stop moving. Listen. She circled him again, her fingers brushing the back of his neck. This means stand your ground. She returned to face him and pressed a single finger just above his belt. This means surrender. Noah's breath caught. Surrender? She stepped even closer, her lips just a whisper away from his. We don't use it lightly, she murmured. Noah's voice was steady. I'm not surrendering. I'm learning, he said, his eyes fixed on hers. Her lips barely moved, and then she whispered, Say it. Noah's voice dropped, calm and firm. I understand. Good, she said, a hint of approval in her voice. Teach me more. The next hour blurred between formal combat training and something else entirely. Misa corrected his posture with sharp precision. Hands on skin, movements redirected with a snap of her fingers or a shove to his chest. Noah learned fast, absorbing her instructions like a soldier, but responded with the agility and danger of someone who wasn't just following orders. He didn't resist her authority. He tested it. They sparred briefly. 6 aggressive moves designed for incapacitation. Misa disarmed him twice. Noah managed to take her down once. When he landed on top of her, straddling her, his breath hot against her skin, he didn't move for 5 seconds. She didn't order him off. Eventually, she rolled him over, sitting on top of him with a smirk. You're improving, she said, her voice teasing. Only because I'm motivated. Noah replied with a grin. She arched a brow. Oh, you're the first person in this war who hasn't tried to break me. Misa didn't answer, though part of her wanted to. She wanted to be vulnerable, to give in to the connection they were building, but she wasn't ready. She stood and stepped off him. We move again at first light. Noah stayed on the ground, arms crossed behind his head, eyes locked on the fire above them. Misa, he said quietly. She paused at the door. Whatever this is, we can lie to everyone else, but not to each other. Misa nodded once and walked into the darkness, leaving him with her words hanging in the air. Later, in the back room, Noah's voice drifted through the silence. Still yours, General. The dream wasn't real, but it felt close enough. Misa stood in the grand war hall, rank stripes gleaming, boots echoing in the vast stone chamber. Her officers stood at attention, their faces emotionless as her orders rang out like gunfire. But when she looked down at her own hands, the gloves were gone, bare fingers trembling. In the center of the hall stood Noah, not dressed as a soldier. He said nothing, but she could feel the question between them. Are you leading them or hiding behind them? She opened her mouth to answer, but then, boom, the dream shattered. Concrete shook, and a muffled explosion split the outer corridor. Noah was already up, rifle in hand, his eyes sharp and focused. Misa was across the room in seconds, slapping the override to seal the main entrance. Breach perimeter, she muttered, checking the console. At least 5 signatures. They found us. Noah was already moving, securing the back corridor with practiced precision. Same team as before? No, Misa replied, his brow furrowed. Then who? Command, she said simply. Noah froze. Your command? They're not mine anymore. Another blast rocked the station. Go to the fallback tunnel, she ordered. You move, I'll collapse the entry. Noah didn't budge. I'm not leaving without you. You will, she snapped. That's a direct order. The wall behind them exploded inward. Concrete dust filled the air, and the world turned to chaos. Misa coughed, her ears ringing, her body bruised from the blast. But she pushed herself up, blood staining her temple. Figures moved through the breach. 4 or 5 soldiers. Noah dug behind a storage rack as plasma shots tore through the air, vaporizing concrete and shredding steel. Misa pulled herself into cover, grabbing Noah's backup weapon without asking. "Cover me." "You're not covering me," he said, but she was already moving. She broke left, drawing fire as she flipped over a debris mound and landed in a crouch. Noah popped up and fired 2 clean shots into the attacker's blind spots. The others regrouped. Misa flanked hard, moving like a living weapon. She disarmed one, took down another with a brutal strike, and dropped a third with a sweep of her leg. The 4th soldier raised his rifle, but Noah fired first, taking him down before he could aim. The smoke cleared, and Misa stood over the last soldier, the one still breathing. She grabbed his collar, ripping off his helmet. The face beneath it made her freeze. "Corin," she said, her voice turning to steel. The soldier blinked up at her, blood in his mouth. "You're a traitor," he rasped. "You were supposed to be on my command rotation." "I was reassigned," Misa said, her grip tightening. "They said you'd fall the moment you let that human into your head." Misa didn't answer. She just let his body fall to the ground. "You are charged with unauthorized use of classified access," the man continued, his voice as cold as the walls around them. "Harboring a known human operative. Disobedience of direct orders from Central Command." Misa didn't flinch. "You left out the part where you're trying to erase your mistakes while burning me to cover your guilt." "Guilt?" one of the counselors scoffed. Noah stepped forward, his calm demeanor unshaken. He activated the device, the one they had risked everything to recover, and slammed it into the console. The hologram flickered to life, showing a cascade of files, names, conversations, and orders, each piece of threat a designation. A covert directive to frame Misa, erase her history, and eliminate Noah before he could leak the truth. Dozens of names were tied to this betrayal, all linked to this very room. The tribunal chamber crackled with tension. One counselor stood, face flushed with anger. "This is unauthorized data." "It's yours," Noah said, his voice steady. "Signed by you. Dated. Index. Enjoy." Another defiant voice echoed. "This proves nothing. It's manipulated." "Then let your own records prove it false." Misa snapped, pulling up the logs. "Cross-check the access times." No one moved. Everyone knows what will show. Silence hung in the air. The head of the tribunal, an older woman who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "You should have stayed hidden," she said softly. "Probably," Noah replied with a smirk. "But then I wouldn't have had the pleasure of pissing you off in person." Her eyes narrowed. "This changes everything." "No," Misa responded, her voice firm. "It just reveals the truth." The woman's gaze flicked toward the guards. "Stand down," she ordered, her voice leaving no room for disobedience. The council erupted in outrage, but the signal had been given. Noah turned to Misa. "Did we just win?" "No," she said quietly. "But we just made it impossible for them to pretend we don't exist." When the chamber cleared, Misa and Noah remained, the silence between them heavy. She stood at the edge of the platform, her gaze distant as she looked out over the city through the mirrored glass. Noah joined her, his presence a quiet force at her side. "They'll come at you harder now," he said. "I know," she replied, her voice steady. "And you're not running?" "No," he said without hesitation. "I didn't think so," she said, almost to herself. "I saw you in that room," she continued. "Not just walking like one of us, but standing taller than any of them, holding power they never taught you." Noah took a step closer. "You gave me that power." "No," she said, her eyes meeting his. "You had it. I just didn't stop you from using it." Their gazes locked, and in that moment, something changed between them. The doors of the council chamber closed, sealing them into something new. Not fugitives, not targets, but symbols. The human who defied capture. The general who defied her own command. Together, they had torn the curtain off the tribunal's corruption, exposing it to the right people. The fallout hadn't hit yet, but it was coming, which is exactly why they needed to disappear. Strategically, Misa didn't take him to a military hideout. Instead, she led him to a suite A top floor off record with no cameras, just 2 rooms with soundproof walls and a panoramic view of the city that wanted both of them gone. The door closed behind them with a soft hiss, and Misa walked ahead, shedding her long uniform coat and draping it over the couch. Noah said nothing as he watched her, noting the way her hands shook once when she hit the sink. She gripped the counter, staring at her reflection in the glass. "Misa," he said quietly behind her. "I should have let you go," she admitted without turning. Noah moved closer. "But you didn't," he said gently. "And now you're branded." She snapped, turning to face him. "Every eye is on us. Every drone, every whisper. You know what that makes you." "No," Noah replied softly, his voice firm. "Yours." She tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "You think this is some twisted romance?" she asked, the edge of her voice sharper. "You think we win and it ends clean? They'll keep coming. They'll twist the narrative. Turn me into a traitor, you into propaganda. That's what happens when power gets personal." He stepped close, his voice low. "You already made it personal the second you touched me." Her eyes flickered, her resolve faltering for just a moment. "You saved me when you didn't have to. You trained me when you didn't trust me. And you stood beside me when the entire system wanted you dead." He paused, adding softly, "I didn't ask for any of that, but I'm not giving it back." She stared at him, and in a flash of emotion, she moved, pushing him back until his body hit the wall. Her face was inches from his. "You saved me," he breathed. "You want to pretend it didn't happen? Fine, but don't lie to yourself." "I'm not lying," she hissed, her hand still gripping him. Noah leaned in closer, his voice barely a whisper. "Say it's not real and I'll walk." Her voice cracked, barely audible. "I can't control this." "You never had to," he murmured. Then her hand found his waist, pulling him closer, and without another word, she kissed him, not softly, but with all the intensity of a fight. The heat between them flared, raw and primal. Their bodies met like weapons drawn, lips clashing, restrained hunger breaking loose. Misa's hand slid up his throat into his hair, pulling him deeper, as Noah anchored her to him. His hands moved down her back, holding her tighter. The kiss was frantic, messy, teeth grazing lips, breath coming fast. Her forehead pressed against his, both of them gasping for air. Noah's voice was thick with desire. "I can't sit down after last night." He grinned, slow and rough. "Then don't." She bit her lip, trying to suppress a smile. They didn't separate that night. When morning arrived, it was a quiet secret. No alarms, no gunfire, just soft light spilling into the sealed glass window above the bed. The sheets were tangled, their bodies beneath a blanket neither had really used. Misa sat against the wall, one knee drawn up, the other leg draped across Noah's thigh. She wasn't touching him, just close enough that she could if she leaned an inch. He was half asleep, one arm thrown across his face to block the light, his hair a mess, jaw rough with stubble. But even now he looked composed. She reached out gently, brushing his arm. He shifted, eyes cracking open. "You watching me again?" "I wasn't watching," she replied. "Liar," he murmured, his voice soft but teasing. He didn't smile, but she felt the warmth in his tone. "Did you sleep?" "Enough," she said. "Same," he replied. They sat in the silence for a beat. Then Misa spoke again. "I need to tell you something." Noah sat up a little, his attention shifting. "If this is a last night was a mistake speech, I'm walking out the front door shirtless." Her lips twitched, but she didn't look at him. "I was 13 when they took me," she said, her voice steady. He looked at her, his expression softening. "Took you?" She nodded. "My aptitude scores flagged me. They didn't ask. My parents were told it was an honor military placement. Fast track. Only the top 1% get pulled." Noah's voice was quiet. "And they trained you?" "No," she replied. "They broke you. Every hour was a lesson in suppression. Control. Don't feel. Don't falter. Don't get attached. If you cry, you're punished. If you disobey, you bleed. If you hesitate, they make an example of someone else." She looked at him now. "I didn't become a commander by accident. I survived things that would turn most people into shadows. Noah sat up fully now, legs over the side of the bed. I've been leading for so long, she continued, that I forgot what it felt like to have no control. And I hated you for being the one person I couldn't break. She met his eyes. Then I started to respect it. Noah spoke low and firm. I don't need to be your weakness. You're not, she whispered. He nodded, his voice steady. Good, because I'd rather be your equal. Misa leaned her head back against the wall, exhaling. Eyes closed. You're the only person I've ever told that to. Noah stood, slowly moving toward the edge of the bed and crouching in front of her. You're still stronger than everyone else in the room, he said softly, including me. She opened her eyes. You think so? He smiled. Show me. Misa let him take her hand, letting herself be gently pulled into his lap. Their bodies were close, the blanket slipping slightly. She didn't speak for a while, just let herself be held. Later that day, Misa stood on a rooftop, watching the city spread out before her as Noah encrypted the last of the leaked data. Behind her, the city was waiting, watching. They'll know we're working together, Noah said. They already know, she replied. You sure you're ready for that? She turned to face him. I was ready the second you didn't break. Noah stepped to her side. Then what happens now? Misa looked out toward the skyline. We make peace harder to ignore. And us? We're warp-proof. Noah chuckled under his breath. Is that your way of saying I'm not getting rid of you? No, she said, stepping closer. Her breath warm against his jaw. That's my way of saying you're mine. The war didn't end with a treaty. It ended with a headline. Human spy reinstated as interspecies liaison. General Misa returns to command. And beneath that headline, grainy surveillance stills. Kyle stepping off a transport, flanked by armed guards who weren't holding him prisoner, but protecting him. Misa trailing behind him, not as his captor, but something far more dangerous, his equal. The media spun the narrative. Command fumed, but no one moved against them. Not when they knew the moment you targeted Kyle. Misa would burn down the building you were hiding in. And if you targeted Misa, Kyle would be waiting at the door, smiling. 3 weeks later, the war hall echoed once more with Misa's voice. Back in uniform, back in power, but changed. Her officers stood straighter now, not just out of fear, but because they knew she wouldn't bluff, wouldn't bend, wouldn't forget. She had faced down the council that built her, killed what needed killing, and rebuilt what was worth saving. Command rotation will shift every 6 hours, she snapped, pacing the line of officers. If any of you try to hide behind protocol the next time someone leaks on the inside, I will personally pin you to the wall and make an example of you. No one spoke because they believed her. Behind her, 2 civilian advisors whispered nervously. One nodded toward Kyle, standing at the edge of the platform in formal liaison garb, arms crossed, expression unreadable. That the spy? One asked. No, the other replied. That's the reason she's still standing. Kyle didn't turn, but he heard it. Later, Misa didn't return to her barracks. Instead, she took the lift to a private suite, buried 4 levels beneath command. The door opened to warmth, shadows, and him. Kyle stood shirtless at the stove, trying and failing to cook the rations. She didn't speak, just walked in and dropped her weapons by the door. You miss me? Kyle asked casually. Misa stepped behind him, running her fingers along his bare spine. I ordered 3 officers into off-world exile today, she said. One of them tried to delay my reforms with a vote. Kyle smirked. And the other 2? They coughed her in my speech. He laughed low. Gods, I love you. She leaned in, her teeth grazing his neck. That was implied. The food burned. They didn't care. Later, on the training deck, they sparred again. Noah moved faster now, cleaner, meaner. His footwork tighter. His stance pure Misa. But she still beat him. She pinned him to the mat, thighs locked around his hips. His breath was thick. Is this a tactical maneuver or a personal attack? Both, she replied. He flipped her, grinning. After last night? She murmured, her voice low and husky. "I can't sit down." Noah smirked. "Then don't." They didn't make it off the mat that night. The next morning, they stood side by side before the fleet transport. New mission, new risks, same city that had tried to kill them. Now pretending it had always wanted peace. Noah glanced at Misa, amused. "You ready for this?" Misa tilted her head. "I was born ready." He nodded. "Always." The ramp lifted, the door sealed, and the general and her spy vanished into the sky. The war didn't end with a treaty. It ended with a headline, a new chapter written in defiance and truth. As Misa and Kyle stood side by side, they became more than fugitives. They were symbols. The human who defied the system, the general who shattered her own command, and together they revealed the rot hidden within the highest echelons of power. Their actions sparked a firestorm, but also laid the groundwork for something new, something stronger. No longer would they run. No longer would they cower in the shadows. The world had seen the truth, and now the pieces were in motion. Misa and Kyle didn't need to be saved, nor did they need anyone's permission. They had become forces unto themselves, unapologetically carving a path through a system that had once tried to crush them. The road ahead wasn't easy, but they faced it together. Unpredictable, dangerous, and unstoppable. What had begun as an act of survival had turned into an unbreakable alliance. The war might have raged on, but now it had a different meaning. For Misa and Kyle, the real battle wasn't about conquest. It was about keeping the truth alive and ensuring the world would never forget what they'd fought for. Together, they were untouchable.